Shalom and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of our weekly Exploring the Parasha class with Rabbi Rebecca Schatz and Rabbi Matt Shapiro.
Shabbat Shalom. We are...
Catch everyone up on the podcast, a couple of important bulletins. Number one, I taught Rabbi Schatz something about Zoom today, and it's very exciting. Number two, we're able to see Denise's face, which is also very exciting. Number three, just making sure everybody knows, as I definitely already did, that Slichot is tomorrow night. Rabbi Schatz, as you were.
Okay. We are going to share
want to say something.
Okay.
When I was growing up, I thought, Rabbi? Like, you know what I mean? Rabbi.
And then you met Rabbi Shapiro?
Well, I had not met him or you two together.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I just want you to know how you are.
Thank you.
Enhancing my understanding of...
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. It's an enhancement. Yes, one of us tries very hard to be professional. You can guess which one of us that is.
I am trying really hard. Trying hard and being successful are not the same thing.
Okay, all right. We are, we're going to actually play a tune for all of you that Rabbi Shapiro introduced me to earlier this week. And it's a really beautiful version of one of the verses in this week's Parsha. And when Rabbi Shapiro sent it to me, I assumed that no one else knew it because Rabbi Shapiro is not the world's guru when it comes to Jewish music. That is true. You cannot refute that. And so I sent it to Rabbi Kligfeld and I said, we really need to sing this. It's so beautiful. And Rabbi Kligfeld responded saying it was one of his favorite tunes growing up, and that it was something that he also thought was a very beautiful rendition of this particular verse. Originally, Rabbi Shapiro and I were going to actually teach this verse today, but there's not so much on this verse. There's not a lot of commentary. So Rabbi Shapiro's idea was that we would play it for you. And without any context, we would let you listen to it and kind of tell us what you think the verse might be about based on the way that it sounds and based on the musical illustration, so to speak, of the verse itself. So without telling you what the verse is, I'm going to play it. This is what Rabbi Shapiro taught me how to do. So we are very excited to be able to do this for you. And by we, I mean the royal we is always a lovely thing. Okay.
Hashkifa mimon kodecha min hashamayim. 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 אשר נתת לנו. אשר נתת לנו.
So it it just repeats over and over again. It is very Simon and Garfunkel. That's true. One of the things that Rabbi Klickfeld pointed out to me that I assume Rabbi Shapiro also knows, but Rabbi Klickfeld was the one who told me, is that the people singing, this particular group is made up of brothers. And so one of the things that happens when you sing with people who share DNA with you, this is a truth. This is true. This is not just a drosh. When you sing with people who you share DNA with, your blending is always better. And so it's like particularly beautiful because they're sharing a lot of tone quality in their voices. I definitely will post the link in just 1 second, but we don't want to give anything away yet. So what do you think this verse is about? What did it make you think of or feel, even if you couldn't understand the words or know what they mean?
It was beautiful, and it reminded me of the song that you did with your brother and dad.
My brothers.
And your father. You did some kind of song together. I don't remember whether it was in one of the classes that we heard it or I just heard it on Facebook.
Oh, on Passover, the song that my brother wrote?
Maybe. Okay.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And this is just a very calming. It reminds me of Lakshiv, listen and
great.
and Lishkav, also listen, lay down, relax, take when you go over like your year and what you've done and what you want to do. I forgot the word for that.
Beautiful. You clearly were hearing certain letters that were making you think of those words. That isn't the word in the song. The word in the song is Hashkifa, like Hashkafa. But it is a very calming, very peaceful tune, which interesting when you think of the words that you thought you were hearing, that it goes very nicely with that. Karen.
It made me think about holding a baby and rocking a baby.
Oh, that's very sweet. That's very, very sweet. Other thoughts or feelings or ideas of what this might be about? Yeah,
I didn't catch the words. I couldn't discern Hashkifa. I was hearing it as a vet and not a fey, and I wasn't making sense of it. But now that I heard you say the words,
yeah.
It gives me sort of the same feeling and has kind of the same meaning as Esaenai.
Interesting. Very interesting. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Rabbi Shapiro so that he can take us through what the verse actually is, and then we'll go back to some of your thoughts based on actually seeing the verse now. Over to you, Rabbi. What's happening?
I didn't realize I was pulling up the verse. I thought you.
I can pull it up. You want me to pull it up?
Yeah.
Okay, I have it right here.
Great. I had the other verses pulled up.
Yeah, no problem.
Oh, I found it. I can do it.
Well, it's right here.
Okay, good job.
Thank you. Would you like to also speak?
Oh, okay. Well, can I mean, the context I'll give for it, by the way, is I was very excited about it because I learned this when I worked at BCI. For people who know BCI, Cantor Harold Messinger taught it to everybody. Brother of Dan Messinger, owner of BB's Bakery and Cafe. Shout out to BB's. I knew Harold before I knew Dan. And he would lead folks in this. And I read this pasuk in this week's Parsha, and I was really excited about it, but I couldn't find it anywhere. So praise be to streaming music services where I was able to find this and share it around. Although I think between Rabbi Schatz and myself, we have now tripled the number of total plays on Spotify of this song over the past 4 days than it had in however many years previous.
Can we also just tell everybody that when you said, at the beginning of the week, Rabbi Shapiro said, let's do this verse, but only if you'll sing it. And I called him and I said, there's no way that I'm getting on a podcast and singing Eretz Zavat Chalav, Chalav U'Dvash, because that's what I thought he was talking about.
So this was all a long con to get her to do that over the past 2 seconds.
Anyway, go ahead.
Hashkifa mim'on kodechecha min hashamayim, look down from your holy abode from the skies. Uvarech et amcha et Yisrael, be'et ha'adama asher natata lanu, bless your people, Israel, and, Schatz, what are you doing?
Oh, sorry.
What are you doing?
I'm just looking.
Okay. And the land that you have given us, a land that as you promised to our fathers, a land flowing with milk and honey. I'll just say for myself, it's a very peaceful song. I also appreciate the Simon and Garfunkel shout out. We've talked a good amount in this class over the past however many weeks it has been, about different concepts of God and how challenging or problematic some of them can be in the Torah and how moving some of them can be in the Torah. When I talk with people about theology and people talk about a tough time believing in God, one of the sort of most time-worn rabbinic moves is like, the God that you don't believe in is also the God that I don't believe in, right? Well, I don't believe God is a man in the sky looking down. Usually I don't believe that either. And there is just something, maybe it's because I have the music in my head, the idea of God looking down from a holy place and granting us favor. And I think this speaks to the power that music can hold in addition to words and analysis and translation. And as Rabbi Schatz alluded to, I am, of the 4 clergy at Temple Beth Am, I am not the music guy, but there is still definitely something about the power that music holds to be able to shift and elevate and reconfigure the way that at least I think about this verse. That's kind of what I don't have much more to say on it other than that, but I think it's a really lovely piece, and even though it's a bit atypical for our time together, I'm glad we got to share it a bit. So it looks like Rabbi Schatz has something queued up that will be spectacular.
Thank you. That's so nice. I do think that it's interesting. Some of you have probably heard the word hashkafa. Like if you have a hashkafa on something, it often means that you kind of give it your okay, right? Like a hechsher or what's another word for that, Rabbi Shapiro? Like your my hashkafa is like the way that I do things. Sure. I think it's a little bit stronger than perspective because it's like how you might ritually do something or
ethos.
What? Ethos. Sure. Yeah. Many of the things that happen at Temple Beth Am, in this era versus the era before and the era after Rabbi Kligfeld are based on his hashkafa, right? Are based on how he wants the community to be seen and run and held together. And so I just wanted to show you that this word hashkifa, right, which means to look down, is the same as the word hashkafa, which is to kind of oversee, or that's why I pull up the dictionary here. You can see in the different forms of the word, it's to look maybe down upon, which obviously in English we think of as a little bit more negative than what it actually means, but that someone, we can just keep on using Rabbi Kligfeld as an example. Rabbi Kligfeld is above the decision, making it so that all of us are the ones who are holding by the decision, but he ultimately is the person who makes it. So he has his hashkafa, right? Just like in this verse, we're obviously not talking about Rabbi Kligfeld, we're talking about God, but that God would look upon the people and be able to like see everything that's below God and everything that has been given to the people. The thing that I really loved about this, the musical kind of illustration of this, is that similar to what Rabbi Shapiro shared in terms of not loving to think about God as like the guy in the sky on a throne, but that everything that you all said about rocking a baby or feeling like you're going to bed or very soothing or all those things, like that can all be heaven, right? That can all be a holy abode. Any of those experiences, right? Elon and I are both at different beaches, but both at a beach right now. And for me, like that is a little slice of heaven, right? Being able to be near the water. And I think it defines for all of us that there are different ways of defining what it means to be kind of in God's land and to see it as little pieces of heaven for each and every person. That's a drosh. That's obviously not what the verse is saying, but any thoughts now that you know what the verse is based on having heard it? I thought maybe Rabbi Shapiro, I'd play it one more time and then people could look at the words and hear it at the same time. And then we can move on to the other verses.
Does it have to do with God looking down upon us?
Yeah. I'm not sure that I understand the question, but the verse does say, yes, that God is looking down on us and on the land that God has given us. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just have to stop sharing my screen for 1 second to do this. So give me a second here.
Hashkifa mimon kodecha min hashamayim 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 אשר נתת לנו אשר נתת לנו
Nancy wrote, the music and the words are very comforting, and I totally agree. As Rabbi Shapiro mentioned, we've really brought the listens on this song up by hundreds. And it's probably because I've been listening to it nonstop since Tuesday or whenever he sent it to me. But the thing that I just noticed when I was looking at, and for those of you on the podcast, we didn't actually say which verse in Torah this was. This is chapter 26, verse 15. And when looking at the verse while listening to the music, one of the things I noticed is that it doesn't go into the Eretz Zavat Chalav Udvash, or anything having to do with the swearing of this land to our fathers, which I think goes back to the statement that I made before, that everybody gets to kind of decide what part of the world it is that we feel like God is looking down on us or walking with us, however you want to imagine God, in this little slice of heaven that we're in right now. And what it doesn't have to be the land of Israel. It doesn't have to be a land that was given to us in Torah or in history, but can just be the land that we are living in now and feeling God's presence in wherever we are, which I really appreciate about the musical artistry of this particular tune. So, okay. I will pass it over to Rabbi Shapiro to take us to our next verses. I just want to end this kind of portion of our morning.
It's a half and half class.
It's a half and half class, yes.
Half and half.
The portion of our morning by saying that I think many of you know that I studied music in college, and one of the things that I really love about music is the way in which we are able to hear something, not necessarily know what it is that we are listening to, and then if you dissect it, whether it's classical music that you're dissecting by musical theory, or if it's this kind of music that you're dissecting based on context and history and connection, the music now will speak to you in a different way when you listen to it without the Torah in front of you. So I hope that you all will copy the link that we sent you. We'll also put it in the podcast so that people can listen to it on their own, and that you'll be able to find connection to this very random verse in this week's Parsha in a more meaningful way now.
This group is going to get like a royalty check from Spotify for $10, and it's going to be more than they've gotten, in the entire time. They're going to be like, what is going on?
Yeah.
They're going to be very confused, but that's okay. I am also very confused. Okay. Let's look at some verses more in our usual way.
Without music.
What?
Without music.
Should I chant them? Should I chant
Oh, yeah, you should.
Nope.
Okay.
Yes, I think that one of the things we've been missing in this class is that Rabbi Shapiro has never sung for us.
That's not true.
That Rabbi
That's not
Schatz
true. I wind up singing in this class more than Rabbi Schatz does.
No.
Much to everyone's chagrin. So,
Well, I think you need to do a duet.
Oh.
That would be bad for everyone, I think.
Okay, we are going to... Oh, am I glitching? Yep. Mm-hmm. There we go. And we're back live from 1039 South La Cienega Boulevard. Great. Okay. We are going to pick things up. Rabbi Schatz, are you laughing and I'm actually coming through, or you're just having a good time?
I'm just laughing at the situation.
Okay, good. We're going to pick things up a skosh lower, further along in the Parsha. We're going to not do as deep a dive as we usually do in these verses, but they caught my eye, and I think they offer some interesting pieces to explore. So we're going to pick it up in chapter 27. We're going to look at verses 2 through 4, but I'll give you verse 1 just for good luck. Moses and the elders of Israel charged the people, saying, "Observe all the instruction." So interesting, just in this verse, kol ha-mitzvah. Oftentimes we've seen kol ha-Torah translated as instruction, and here we see mitzvah, which plays a role potentially in what we'll see over the course of the next 3 verses that I command to you today. Okay, verse 2. V'haya bayom asher ta'avru et hayarden. On the day.
These are good tropes. You really should be chanting them.
I'm good. On the day that you cross the Jordan River to the land, El Haaretz, to the land, Asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach, that the Lord your God gives to you. V'hakemota lecha avanim gedolot. You shall set up for yourself big rocks. V'sadta otam basid, and you should plaster them with plaster. Why should I do that, everyone? V'chatavta alehen, you should write upon them, et kol divrei haTorah hazot be'ovrecha, you should write upon them all the words of this teaching. So just interesting, right? Instruction versus teaching. All the words of this teaching when you cross over. Lema'an asher tavo el haaretz asher Adonai Elohecha noten lach, that the Lord your God is giving you land.
Lecha.
What?
Noten lecha.
Noten lecha, excuse me. Eretz zavat chalav udvash, a land flowing with milk and honey. We're getting a lot of that this week. Rabbi Schatz, do you want to sing that again?
No.
Okay. Ka'asher diber Adonai Elohei avotecha lach, as the Lord God of your fathers promised you. V'haya be'ov rechem et hayarden, and when you cross the Jordan, takimu et ha'avanim ha'ela, you should set up these stones. Asher anochi mitzvah etchem b'yom hayom b'har Eval, that I command you to do this day, Mount Eval. V'sadta utam v'seed, rather. You should coat them with plaster. I find these verses interesting for a few reasons, but our time is shorter than it usually is, and I want to give folks an opportunity to reflect on them a bit. So I will pause there and pass it over to Rabbi Schatz for a speed round of kushiot, and then we'll spend a little time talking them through.
Okay, speed round. Any kushiot that people have about verses 2 through 4?
Why are we coating stones with plaster?
Great question.
Great. It is a great question. Why do the stones need to be coated? Why is it important that they be coated with something specific? I don't know that I found anything on that, but it is a very interesting question. Yeah. Joanna.
I mean, I even want to back it up one more step. Like, why do we even need to set up stones? What's the point of setting up stones?
Great. Fantastic. What are the stones doing here? What is the point of it's also very specific setup, right? How big they are, where they go, when they get brought, what you put on them. Great. So what's the deal with the stones, and why is that important? Other kushiot? Oh, Joanna, go ahead.
So, every time we see Torah, like, our instinct is to think of it in our head as like Torah, the whole Torah, the 5 books of Moses.
Yeah.
But here it's just translated as this teaching. So what does this teaching mean? Which particular teaching are we talking about?
Great
question.
Rabbi Shapiro really liked that question. Fantastic. Denise.
So where it says to write all the words of this teaching upon the stones, how big are these stones?
Yeah.
Yep.
Great. Yeah. So what Rabbi Shapiro right now is trying to buy stones for one of his programs for High Holidays. So when he said to me, I need to buy stones.
I'm looking for a good stone merchant, if anyone has one.
He said, I need to buy stones. And I said, well, how big do they need to be? Right. What are we talking about here? Right. What do we need to do with these stones?
And then also the plaster, do you write on the plaster, or do you cover the words with the plaster? Or
Great.
That's not clear.
It sounds like this is the beginning of, the instructions to an art project in 3rd grade, right? Like what do you write on the stone? Do you put the plaster over the writing? Do you have to put the plaster down first so that you can put the writing on the plaster? What are all these different steps? Why are they so important? It seems to be that the Torah doesn't often tell us how to do art projects, but here we are being told to do one. So what is this all about, and what's the importance there? Yeah, Nancy.
Why do we have to be told twice?
Why do we have to be told twice? Told what twice?
Oh, I'm sorry. To set up the stones. So it's in 2 it says set up the stones and coat them with plaster, and in 4 it says set up the stones and coat them with plaster.
Great, fantastic. Yeah. So again, one of the many questions that we've asked over the course of this year of learning is why redundancy, right? Why do we have to say things twice? We know that there's an economy of language in the Torah. So if something is being said twice, there must be a reason behind it, why this particular instruction. Elon and then Bonnie.
Yeah, it's not the only thing that's said twice in these verses. In fact, it says, into the land that the Lord your God is giving you in verse 2. And then again in verse 3, it says, when you cross over to enter the land that the Lord your God is giving you. We got it from verse 2 that the Lord your God is giving it. Why the extra emphasis on the fact that God is giving us this land?
Great.
And it even says, Elon, along your lines, it says the Lord your the God twice in verse 3.
Yes. Yeah, that I think is more just an English thing, right? I think that's like saying Rabbi Shapiro as opposed to just Rabbi, right? It's just giving emphasis to the type of name for God. But yes, it is said multiple times in that one verse. Bonnie.
Well, again, there are 3 times that they mention right when you cross over the Jordan.
Yeah.
It's also in all 3 verses.
Great. So there's a lot of repetition that we're seeing in these 3 verses, and around a topic that I don't know about you, but I had never focused on before. So clearly not a topic that is, top of mind when we think of Parshat Tavo. So why is it so important that it's, two parts to that. How come it's become less important if it's said so many times? And how come it was so important in the Torah to be written multiple times for us to remember this seemingly benign and maybe even mundane and silly act? Rabbi Shapiro, I don't see any other hands. Do you want to tell us why you were interested in these verses to begin with?
Sure. I mean, Rabbi Schatz messaged me saying I'm not loud enough. Is this better?
Yes, it's much better.
Good. I'm not often told that I'm not loud enough, so it's nice to mix things up. I'll give the meta thought that caught my eye, and then there were some specific questions that I found a few. I didn't find big chunks on this, but I found some interesting responses to some of the questions that I were asked. So maybe I'll pepper those in and we'll see what folks think. The thematic piece that came to mind for me is, just as Bnei Yisrael are at a threshold, so are we on the calendar, right? 10 shopping days left till Rosh Hashanah, but who's counting? I'm not. Rabbi Schatz might be. So right, we're on the threshold of our own transition calendrically, just like Bnei Israel are on the threshold of a transition geographically and in terms of their leadership. And I think it's an interesting question to ask, as you are moving from one place to another, whether in terms of time or geography, what are you doing to anchor yourself, to carry pieces forward, to set up ritually in such a way that calls attention to what you need to be paying attention to, and that's kind of what popped into my brain as I saw these. In addition to thinking it's interesting about the choreography and the stones and the plaster and what goes on the stones and what that's all for, but on that broader sort of thematic level, that's kind of what popped into my head. So I'll offer that up as a big picture kind of reflection for folks. The question of what goes on the stones is an interesting one, because I don't know if you guys know, Torah is pretty long. So how big of stones are we talking about here? If you're supposed to put the whole Torah on stones, these are some pretty big honking stones, right? So where are we finding stones this big and we're putting them in the river? And there's a lot of conversation about, is it the whole Torah or not? There's a great line I saw. So some people think, right? Some say, where did I see this? Some people say that it's actually the whole Torah, and therefore it was just a miracle. It must have been a miracle in order to fit everything. Sadia Gaon says it's actually just the commandments, right? That it's actually just the commandments that get written on the stones, which is an interesting differentiation. Like the Torah itself doesn't seem to draw a distinction between the commandments themselves and narrative, right? In the Torah, as we've seen, commandments and narrative are interspersed. So it's interesting to have a commentator say, of course you couldn't fit everything on there. You would just write the commandments. So I thought that was an interesting piece. And some folks say, nope, the whole Torah was on there, and it was actually a miracle. So people were asking about why plaster twice, and the Talmud says that the reason that it's plastered twice, and this was very interesting, is that the first sort of set of plaster was to make it so that you could write on the stone, right, and see what was written. But then the second time it says plaster is that you then plaster over what you wrote, which is not, yeah. Rabbi Schatz is looking at me like I'm crazy, which I am.
Well, what does that mean?
Meaning if I have...
laminate?
No. I don't think they had laminating machines in the ancient.
No. I don't mean laminate.
I don't know. I'm not an expert on lamination. I know about Zoom, but I don't know about laminating.
I'm just saying what I mean is that like to cover it in something that will keep it forever.
Davka the opposite.
Oh.
Because what it said was it's resolving. Let me see.
Sort of like paint over it.
Exactly.
Oh.
So this is from Sota 35b. They plastered it over with plaster. And there's a sense there. If you basically, because we wonder why is it that Bnei Israel should get stuff that other nations don't. And so by having the stones there, anyone can access it, but you need to be like curious and go seek it out, right? So if I, Matt Shapiro, who am not Jewish, I'm walking along the banks of the River Jordan and I see some stones covered with plaster, I then have a choice. I can say, oh, that's fine. There are just random, enormously large stones covered with plaster in the middle of the Jordan River. I'm going to go about my ancient Near Eastern day. Or I could say, interesting. Look at that. Those stones are covered with plaster. I wonder if there is something there that I might be interested in. I go over and I chip away some of the plaster. And lo and behold, it says, I'm the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt, right? That like, but you have to like look a little bit closer, is what the Talmud seems to be suggesting, which is an interesting answer in terms of A, it answers why it says plaster with plaster twice. B, it answers sort of the ongoing question of how come Jews get Torah but other nations don't, even though C, it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense as a biblical art project. So that was just like an interesting piece that I found. I'll offer up, Joanna, a response that I found not from a classical source in terms of why do this at all, and then I'll pause and you can pop back and forth. Basically, what I saw, this was out of an article. I want to make sure I get the name of this publication right. This is out of something of an article I found. The title of this article is "What Do These Stones Mean? The Riddle of Deuteronomy 27," and it is an article from the Journal of the Evangelical Theological Society, which I have never quoted from before. Rabbi Schatz might have. She is better read than I am. But I have never quoted from the Journal of the Evangelical Theological Society before. But what was interesting about this is that this author talked about how there's a tripartite covenant between God and the people of Israel and the land of Israel. And as the people are crossing over the Jordan, that sort of like seals the deal with that covenant, right? So like that's why stones are important, because it's a physical embodiment of the covenant between God and Bnei Israel and now Eretz Israel, right? And so there was something, and that's why potentially there's so much repetition in these verses about the Lord your God, the land he gave to your fathers, right? Because when we cross over, that's when that covenant really takes hold. So by putting the Torah on the stones, there is something about that sort of like locks in that threefold covenant. For all the Franz Rosenzweig fans in the house, of which I know there are many, his core work was Star of Redemption. Folks know Star of Redemption? Do people know this? No? All right, we're going to do Franz Rosenzweig in 2 minutes or less. Who's ready? I'm ready. Franz Rosenzweig talks about how there are 3 points. There is God. Does this work? There is God, there is Israel, and then there is the world. God is connected to the world through creation. God is connected to Israel through revelation, and Israel is connected to the world through redemption. So when you put that all together, creation, revelation, and redemption, you get a lovely pictograph that many of you know quite well. Ta-da!
That is very cool.
Star of Redemption, Franz Rosenzweig. 2 minutes or less.
Very good.
So
we could just end there. That was great.
Hey, sometimes people get very confused when I talk philosophy. People actually seem to follow that. That was great. That was really cool.
It's a good party trick.
So great party trick. Almost as good as Rabbi Schatz's show choir dances. It's similar to this, right? This sense that there is a covenant that is like taking hold by doing this. So that was the other thing that came to mind looking.
I think that one thing that you said that I had not thought of, nor did I see in any of the commentaries, but that's really interesting is this idea that we really only take hold of something once we've kind of separated ourselves from it. That the writing of the covenant, the Torah, the learning, the teaching, whatever you want to call it, was done once we were on the outside, not while we were still on the inside. And how interesting it is that when you take a step away from something, the perspective that you have that potentially gives, in this case, you a greater attachment or ability to learn that which you'd be putting on these stones. And it's very similar, kind of metaphorically almost, to what we believe Moshe is actually doing in the book of Deuteronomy, which is taking a recounting of all the things that have happened, but from the outside. And so the writing on these stones on the outside of that experience, this seems to be very parallel as almost a symbol of what Moshe is doing in general, that the people are now taking on for themselves. And I had definitely not thought about that until you shared your pieces. So
cool. Yeah, I think there's definitely that. And look, sort of inverse to that, there are comments in the chat. Joanna wrote, I'm thinking back to Genesis when monuments were erected during transitional moments.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I think similar. I mean, that's what Yaakov did, right? Like at Beit El, and he says this, right? I'm dedicating this place to God. This is like that moment on steroids and in sort of like a different context. Instead of marking there's something that's important that happened here, that there is something that is important in the process of moving through here. But yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, is there anything about it being done individually as opposed to as a group? I don't think it is. When you cross over, but it doesn't say anything about like every individual doing it or doing it as a community. Because what I was thinking was,
it does seem to it seems to transition back and forth because it says Ta'avru et hayarden, but then it says the hakemota lecha avanim gedolot.
Right. So I
not
do,
the hakemotem lachem, which is interesting.
Right. Well, so also, I've done lots of programs with kids where we've had them and adults actually to take a stone and to write one word on it, but that's like a focal point for you. They can keep on your desk if you're an adult, or if you're a kid, you can keep in your backpack or whatever, as a way of, when you take out that stone, you see the word honesty, or you see the word trust, or you see the word calm, or, whatever, just a thing for you to really focus on, like almost a meditation practice in terms of, and yes, thank you.
I'm bringing music. You're doing meditation. It is topsy-turvy day here on the Parasha podcast.
I'm not doing meditation. I'm just referencing it. But that maybe every person, and this is a real drush, I don't think this is what the Torah meant, but maybe every person was charged to write down what their version of teaching was, whether that was many words or one word or a phrase or a 6-word memoir, as we know Rabbi Klickfeld enjoys, or whatever, or a moment, right? Maybe it was a story, that maybe it wasn't the teaching, capital T, right? That maybe it was the teaching that you need to keep with you as you make this transition into a new land, which that's kind of how you set up in terms of the time that we're in right now. But I really love the idea that it could also be for any time. It just needs to be something that you need to focus on.
Are you ready for an even wackier drush?
Yeah, I didn't think that was so wacky, but yeah, sure, go ahead.
Well, no, but
yes,
well, we're talking a lot. Maybe I'll I'm going to say this anyway. This is something that I'm very confident is not the pshat. How's that?
Okay, great. Who's it by? Oh, you're showing.
I'm just making it up right now. No, I'm just something that I noticed. You're looking at me like I'm crazy, which I am.
You're showing us something.
Yeah. So if you look, right, so this word, seed, plaster, right? It's this in verse 2 and in verse 4. Those are the only two times that shows up in the Torah. You know me.
You like that?
I like that. Yeah. If you scramble those, right, the letters of seed around, Rabbi Schatz, what do you get?
Dvash?
No. No.
I mean, that's also true.
No. The shin, or the sin rather, and the yud.
Oh, Shaddai.
Yeah, Shaddai.
Oh.
Come on, that's kind of cool. It only shows up twice in the whole Torah, and you can talk about like your as you do this. I don't know. There's something kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I could. Yes, there is a drash there for sure. No, I like that. Anybody? We've spoken at you for actually 55 minutes. So, any thoughts, questions, comments? We can keep talking to you.
Are you guys going to continue after Yontif?
That is a great kushia that has nothing to do with these verses.
Since everything else is being done with before the Chagim?
No. So Rabbi Shapiro is going to be really focusing on the mental and spiritual health of our community through his
Center for Spiritual Growth.
This class is part of it. My mental and spiritual health.
Well, then you can take that up with Rabbi Shapiro. My guess is that individually we will be taking on different things in the coming year. I am always happy to be pushed to think that maybe this is something that could fit in our schedules. But talk to Rabbi Shapiro about that. And
Rabbi Shapiro, it's part of my mental and spiritual health. I think you need to consider that.
I will take that under advisement. What we have talked about is,
and then we should call on Joanna because I think that she actually
we could just take a vote in this class, and I'm betting that most people would agree with me on that, right, guys?
I think unfortunately.
Preaching to the choir. That was very good, Renee. That was very.
I think unfortunately this is not a democracy. It is a benevolent duopoly.
It was worth a shot, though,
It was
right?
worth a shot. I will say we are
worth a Schatz.
We are thinking about, and Joanna, I apologize, this might leave you out a little bit, but we are talking about maybe for the last class, thinking about getting folks together in person, like still doing it over Zoom, but maybe doing like a siyum or something in person or on Simchat Torah. And Joanna, we'll still set you up over Zoom. We'll still stream it. We'll just like put the laptop on a chair.
But in all seriousness, before we go to Joanna, and then Joanna can have the last piece of Torah since this is Gamze Torah, I guess. In all seriousness, like Rabbi Shapiro and I love teaching together and love teaching this class. And if it is something that is interesting to people, we would be very compelled to hear that you want it to continue. And it might just be that it has to look a little different, or it can't be a whole hour, or it might just be that it changes in some way. Or maybe we only look at one particular, like the first verse of every Parasha, or I don't know, something to make it a little bit different in the coming year, since we would be doing all the Parashiyot that we just did for all year again. So, happy to talk offline.
Also, Rabbi Shapiro was thinking about a Chassidut class.
Oh.
Way back.
Rabbi Shapiro is just going to be teaching every day of the week in the coming year, it seems. So I'm glad to be able to pass that along. Okay, Joanna.
So 2 quick things. First, to comment on this very discussion that we're having right now. I'm not sure what contributes more to my mental health, like the actual Torah and learning that we do, or the hilarious banter that happens between the two of you. So, if we can't have a full hour of like Torah and profound learning, if we could just have, 5 to 10 minutes of Rabbi Schatz and Rabbi Shapiro banter, that might do us. I'm just saying.
Sure. Yeah.
And on a more serious note, that already, like, I don't quite have it in my head anymore, but that last pasuk that you just showed us, Rabbi Shapiro, where we were sort of anagramming the letters to Shaddai, I was thinking of the, like when we say in Aramaic sometimes, B'siyata Deshmaya. How is that? I don't know my Aramaic. Like, is that with a sin, with a samech?
I actually can't picture how it's written out.
Because then it's a samech. The letters stay in order, and referring to God as God from Shemaiah is Shemayim. Then it ties in with everything we've been talking about all day.
Beautiful, beautiful.
You brought it all together.
You had the bow today. Awesome. Great. Well, find a pasuk in every parsha that relates to mental health. Awesome. Yes. Rabbi Shapiro, we're going to be teaching this class again next year.
That is a good idea, Elon. That is a really good idea.
Great idea. And
how about a musical tour through Torah, a song for every parsha?
Oh, boy.
I'm even willing to help you, Rabbi Shapiro, with the mental health part of the pasuk.
All right.
I think you're all great. We're gonna definitely try to teach something together. We see that is of interest, and we also really do enjoy doing it together. Yeah. We will. The funny thing is, for all of you to know, is that I brought this up as a topic last week and was not as convincing as all of you are being. So thank you. I hope that we'll see you next week, which will be right before Rosh Hashanah. But I hope that you are also taking.
We will be just as focused as we were today. A mere 3 days before Rosh Hashanah, we will be laser focused and extraordinarily.
I thought we were focused.
Sure.
I lost my train of thought, but thank you, Joanna, for that beautiful like conclusion to the class, and hope to see you all over Shabbat and maybe even at Slichot, and then over the Chagim. Shabbat Shalom.
You have been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast site or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information about Temple Beth Am Los Angeles, go to tbala.org.